Admiral Zexathari of the Hegemony Third Fleet couldn't suppress the mandible clicks that passed for laughter among his species. Through the holographic display of his flagship's command center, he watched the approaching human vessels with barely contained amusement. "Look at those primitive hulks," he chittered to his bridge crew, his four eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. Chemical propulsion, metal hulls, projectile weapons. Do they truly believe such antiquated technology can challenge the might of the hegemony? The Veltar species had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3 millennia, their sleek energy-based vessels cutting through space like silver daggers. Their ships were marvels of engineering, crystalline hulls that could phase shift to avoid projectiles, plasma cannons that could melt through any known material, and quantum drives that made faster-than-light travel as simple as thought itself. Humanity, by comparison, was laughably primitive. "Sir," reported Navigation Officer Crix, "the human fleet consists of 12 vessels. Our sensors indicate they're using some form of guided munitions and what appears to be railguns." The young officer's voice carried the same incredulous tone that had become common when discussing human technology. "Railguns," Zexathari repeated, savoring the word like a fine delicacy. "How wonderfully archaic. Shall we inform the Council that we've encountered a species that still believes in hurling pieces of metal at their enemies?" The bridge crew erupted in the clicking, chittering sound of Veltar amusement. Even the usually stoic tactical officer, Vexnal, permitted himself a brief display of mandible rattling that indicated extreme mirth. Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution watched the alien fleet through her own tactical display with grim determination. 12 human ships against 47 hegemony vessels. The odds were worse than unfavorable. They were catastrophic. "Ma'am," reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Torres, "the aliens are maintaining formation at maximum engagement range. They seem to be waiting for something." "They're enjoying themselves," Chen replied, her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood the tactical situation perfectly. "They think we're going to provide entertainment before we die." The hegemony had made first contact with humanity 6 months ago, arriving at the outer colonies with demands for immediate surrender and integration into their empire. When humanity had politely declined, the aliens had expressed surprise at such foolishness from a species that still used primitive kinetic weapons and chemical-based propulsion systems. What the hegemony didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humanity's apparent technological backwardness was entirely deliberate. "All ships, this is Retribution Actual," Chen broadcast to her small fleet. "Execute Protocol 7. Let's show these bastards why humans stopped using energy weapons." Admiral Zexathari was still savoring his anticipated victory when his sensor officer's mandibles stopped clicking abruptly. "Sir," Velnock said, his voice tight with confusion, "the human vessels are changing. Their hulls appear to be reconfiguring themselves." On the holographic display, the human ships were indeed transforming. What had appeared to be crude, boxy vessels were suddenly sprouting additional weapons mounts, their hulls splitting open to reveal previously hidden systems. Most disturbing of all, the spaces between the ships began to shimmer with some kind of field effect. "What by the eternal void are they doing?" Zexathari demanded. His answer came in the form of 12 simultaneous flashes of brilliant light. The human ships hadn't fired projectiles. They had fired pure kinetic energy, focused and accelerated by magnetic fields that operated on principles the hegemony thought they understood. But these weren't simple railguns. These were mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, each shot containing more kinetic energy than a hegemony plasma torpedo. More importantly, each projectile was actually a swarm of thousands of smaller projectiles, each one capable of independent guidance and equipped with its own miniaturized AI. The first volley struck the hegemony fleet with the force of concentrated stellar fury. Admiral Zexathari watched in horrified fascination as his ship's phase shift technology, their primary defense against kinetic weapons, proved utterly useless. The human projectiles didn't behave like simple chunks of metal. They adapted, predicted, phase shift patterns, and struck their targets during the brief microseconds when the crystalline hulls had to return to normal space to dump excess energy. 17 hegemony vessels disappeared in the first salvo, their exotic matter cores destabilizing in brilliant flashes of annihilation. Impossible, Zexthari whispered, his mandibles clicking in distress rather than amusement. Their technology. Readings indicated primitive kinetic weapons. How are they? Sir! Velnox's voice cracked with panic. The human ships are firing again, but the projectile signatures are different this time. The second volley consisted of what human military doctrine called bunker busters, projectiles designed to penetrate deep into a target before detonating. But these weren't equipped with chemical explosives. Instead, each projectile carried a miniaturized antimatter charge carefully contained until the moment of impact. 23 more hegemony ships vanished in cascading antimatter explosions. Captain Chen watched the alien fleet's devastating losses with professional satisfaction rather than glee. The hegemony had made the classic mistake of assuming that apparent technological simplicity meant actual technological inferiority. Humanity had indeed mastered energy weapons, exotic matter manipulation, and phase shift technology. They had also learned, through bitter experience, that such technologies were vulnerable to countermeasures. Energy weapons could be deflected, exotic matter could be destabilized, and phase shift fields could be predicted and exploited. So humanity had returned to kinetic weapons, but kinetic weapons refined by centuries of advanced materials, science, quantum mechanics, and artificial intelligence. The result was a weapon system that appeared primitive to scanning technology, but delivered devastation that advanced civilizations were completely unprepared to handle. Third volley, prepare smart mines, Chen ordered. The final salvo wasn't aimed at the remaining 7 hegemony ships directly. Instead, each projectile deployed thousands of microscopic mines in the space around the alien vessels. Each mine was equipped with quantum entanglement communication systems and AI processors that could calculate optimal detonation patterns in real time. Admiral Zexthari had just enough time to realize that his entire species had made a fundamental error in judgment before his flagship disappeared in a precisely coordinated web of antimatter explosions. In the silence that followed, Captain Chen opened a communication channel to Hegemony High Command. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force," she said, her voice calm and professional. "Your third fleet has been destroyed. I suggest you reconsider your demands for our surrender." The response came after a long pause. We underestimated your capabilities. The hegemony wishes to open diplomatic negotiations." Chen smiled grimly. "We thought you might see things differently after getting a proper demonstration of human military technology." What the galaxy would learn, what the hegemony was beginning to understand, was that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology. It was their ability to appear weak while being strong, to seem primitive while mastering principles that more advanced civilizations had forgotten in their rush toward exotic solutions. Sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones, especially when refined by species that had never stopped innovating, never stopped improving, and never stopped preparing for the day when someone would mistake their humility for weakness. The hegemony would not make that mistake again. Neither would any other species in the galaxy, once word of humanity's primitive weapons spread through the stars.